I entered the war in November of '71. I had the privilege and the pleasure to serve at Fort Bragg for about 7 months after flight school. After being there 6 months, I called Department of Army at the Pentagon and I said, well, are there any orders for me to go to fixed wing school? And the lady that I was speaking with said, well, where are you right now? And I said, I'm at Fort Bragg. And she says, well, you need to go to Corps headquarters because don't you know you're supposed to be at Fort Rucker on Monday? And I said, no. I said, why am I supposed to be at Fort Rucker? And she says, you have orders to go to the OH-6 transition, which was the aircraft that I flew. It was a little scout aircraft. So when I did that, I had to go check out, in haste, I had to go and check out of my unit and tell the guys goodbye and all that. And they started hooting and howling and saying, well, you're going to be bait. You're going to be flying a Loach. You're going to be down drawing fire and all of that. Well, the guys that had been to Vietnam, they liked to tease the new guys. And they called us new guys. And so I thought they were teasing. And they told me a few of the details. And I said, no way anybody would ever do something that's stupid. And I went to Fort Rucker. They taught us very well how to fly the aircraft. They did it in 2 weeks. And when I got out of that course, I could fly it like the back of my hand. So then I went to Vietnam, and I remember my first training mission. I was in the left seat with an old scout, and he said, well, now I'm going to show you. And we were in country. We weren't in Cambodia at the time. And he hovers down, he slows down, and he says, now look down in that bunker. Do you see anything in there? I said, what? He said, see if you see anything in there. And we were probably 20 feet off the ground. I said, blow it up, and then I'll look. And he said, no, you don't do that. You're a scout. You're supposed to find them. If they're not there, don't blow them up. And so I said, well, all right. That was the beginning. That was my first day that I flew. After 7 days of flying, I was flying on my own, and from then I had to look forward to the next day instead of worrying about what might happen. I had more worry about how am I going to do this. I was first sent to Fuloy, was the name of the encampment where I was in B Troop 3rd of the 17th, and our area of operation was the western side of Vietnam and into Cambodia. We were in pretty bad stuff, finding, trucks and well-equipped North Vietnamese, but they were hiding. They weren't coming after us, but we'd find them and we'd shoot them. I would fly right in the trees, just like I talked about earlier. I would see bunker complexes or see people, and then I would mark it with smoke, and the Cobras would be up high, and they would fire rockets. And those rockets were very powerful, and they would blow trees away, and they would blow holes in bunkers. And then I would come back and see what we had shot. Well, in the Easter invasion that happened in March, the North Vietnamese came across the border. When they came across, they invaded the Quang Tri province, which was the northernmost province. They pillaged and burned everything in between. And so our unit was, the big hand in the sky said to our unit, you're going north. And so we went to Hue Phu Bai, which is near the Quang Tri province. I was there at the end of the war. So there were very few troops there then. We were standing down. Everybody was going home. The unit that I was in when I was flying Cambodia, they stood down and redeployed to Hawaii. Now, I don't know who I made mad, but I got reassigned to a combat unit F troop. But we went north. One of my first days out there, we flew to a fire base called Firebase Bastogne. It was occupied by South Vietnamese, but they had two advisors, at least two advisors there, and they were surrounded. I got deep. Then my Cobras got shot. They got hit. And so I thought, well, I'll just go ahead and fly on through this. I mean, there can't possibly be another 3 miles of them, but I missed another miscalculation. What I did is I fell and I started doing this to get out of the fire, and the further I went, the worse it got, until I got to Fire Base Bastogne. And I could see them. They were dug in all around the fire base, but the fire base was equipped well enough to defend itself. They weren't going to get overrun at the time, but the reason that we were going there was to see if we could resupply it. When I got there, I realized that those people were desperate. They were hungry. They were low on ammo. And I was talking to the Americans on the radio, and I said, well, something like, we can get you, maybe we'll come down and try to get you out. And they said, don't do that, because if you do, then the South Vietnamese Army will storm your aircraft, and nobody will get out. And I just said, well, okay, well, I'm going to go back and see if we can find another way to get y'all out. And so those two guys stayed behind. They, I guess they gave their life to save ours. But that sticks in my mind, how those guys had the courage to say, no, don't come in. I came back from Vietnam with a lot of memories, and it was a magnificent tour. Magnificent in that I didn't get killed. Magnificent that I don't think I could have squeezed another event in the 367 days that I was there. When I got back, I came back to the loving arms of a family and the loving arms of South Carolina, and it made it really easy to be here. I mean, there were a few people that said ugly things, but they were ignorant. I don't think it was to be bitter or hostile. I think they just didn't know. When I got out of the Army 2 years later, I had too many other things to worry about. I had to make a living. I wanted to be successful. I was ambitious and wanted to be successful. And so I didn't worry about what was in the past. I worried about what was coming up. And I guess I can say I made lemonade out of my lemons.